Hi, how you doing? Come on in. Come on in. Welcome.
Pleasure to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Come on in. Come on in. I'm sorry I keep you waiting. Hi. Good to see you. Welcome. Good to see you. Welcome. How you doing? Good to see you. Welcome. Good to meet you. Hi. Welcome. Good to see you. How you doing? Welcome. Hi. Good to see you. Welcome. Hi. Good to see you.
I'm at the end.
That's okay. Come on in.
I'd like to start.
Yes.
In your biography, it said you dreamed of becoming a minister.
Yes.
Do you view your work in Congress today as sort of a secular ministry?
Yeah, I see my work in the Congress. I see my position as a congressperson representing the people of the 5th Congressional District of Georgia as an extension of my religious faith, my religious conviction. I'm no longer, you didn't get it from the video, but probably you got it from someplace else. When I was growing up, it was my responsibility to care for chickens, to raise chickens. And from time to time, I used to preach to the chicken. But now I'm preaching to members of the Congress and preaching to the American people from time to time.
Lincoln-Douglas debate of 1858, Douglas told Lincoln, "Let's keep moral and religious convictions out of political debate." Lincoln responded, "Isn't it false statesmanship to try and make policy based on caring nothing about the very things that people care most about?" Do you think that we need to bring greater moral discourse into political debate?
Well, I think it's very important to have a sense of morality in a political debate. I think it's very difficult to separate a sense of value, to separate not to have a moral compass. You need some force, you need a sense of self, not just your individual self, but you need a sense of the entire self, the sense of humanity. I think from time to time in political life, in the Western world in particular, but in our own country, you have men and women that emerge on a large national level, and sometimes at the state and local level, and they love humanity, they love the world, but they really don't like people. It's okay, we can love 250, 260 million people, a lot of people around the world, but they can't stand being with individuals. They can't stand with the idea of getting their hands dirty to deal with the nitty-gritty problems of everyday people, really. And I think it's important for men and women in the political arena to have that sense of what is right, what is wrong, to have that moral compass. And I think that the great question is one of the questions that the great teacher tried to make plain and clear in the gospel, which we call the golden rule. Really, you do unto others as you have them to do unto you. You treat people like you want to be treated. If more of us as politicians would say, do you want to be treated like we treat the children, the elderly, the needy? So you need more. I think it's inseparable.
How do we instill some of the idealism and vigor in our generation that you had in yours? And how do we promote excitement around the feeling of civic responsibility?
I think it's important for young people in particular, but people of all ages to understand what my generation tried to do and the way we did it. Many of us were greatly inspired by what we saw happening around the world, especially in Africa. We saw the whole movement, the whole struggle for independence and liberation. But we also were deeply inspired by the campaign of John F. Kennedy in 1960. In November 1960, in the fall of 1960, you saw this young senator from New England waging a campaign for the presidency, and then he got elected. And his campaign and his very election created a sense of hope, created a sense of optimism, and in my estimation, ushered in a period of great expectation in America. And many of us identify with it, that it was sort of, we can do almost anything. And at the same time, we saw in America those signs that said white and colored. We saw segregation, we saw racial discrimination, and we wanted to do something about it. And we were inspired to do something about it, to stand up, to fight, to bring about change. And I think it would be interesting for this generation of young people to study the 60s, to watch the films, to read the books, to listen to the music. A lot of things came together to inspire us. I saw many of my friends and co-workers that were involved, and we were very young. Some were 17, 18, 19, 20, and then there was many high school students that were involved, and there were elementary school students that got involved. People got arrested, they went to jail. We literally grew up overnight, and sometimes when I think about it, it was sort of unreal for us to be caught up in something much larger than any of us. And I think if people just go back and read contemporary history and study that contemporary history, it would serve as a source of inspiration, I think. We did believe in the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. We did accept the idea that there is a spark of divinity in every human being. There's something very sacred about the human personality. Yes.
In a speech in 1963, he said, "We will march through the streets of Danville, Cambridge, and Birmingham, but we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity." Now you're a respected figure in the House. In between, there have been many years of struggle. Has the way in which you view your mission changed over this time?
Well, I made this speech on August 28, 1963, during the March on Washington. I was 23 years old. I had all of my hair, and I was a few pounds lighter. So my physical being has changed a great deal, but in terms of my philosophy, in terms of my basic beliefs, I don't think it changed at all. Because if you accept the philosophy of nonviolence as a way of life, as a way of living, nonviolence, that whole idea become one of those immutable principles that you do not deviate from. So from time to time, when I'm back in Georgia in my own district, talking to people, like I spoke to a large group of religious leaders and ministers yesterday morning, at a school with a group of students, sometimes even here on the floor of the House or in a committee meeting, I preach a little. It's not acceptable, it's not popular to talk about the idea of an interracial democracy, of the beloved community, of laying down the burden of race, of creating a sense of community. But I think it's needed now more than ever before.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you say something about how it is possible to maintain a long-term commitment to one's ideals in the face of so many competing priorities and the time that it takes to promote any meaningful change?
Well, it's a very good question. It is my belief that if you believe in something, you have to fight for it. You have to live for it. It becomes part of you. It controls your very being. I happen to be a believer in the idea of the beloved community and open society. In a community that is at peace with itself, where we can lay down the burden of race and take care of the basic human needs of all of our people. I believe in that. I believe that somehow, in some way, that we got to end discrimination based on race, on color, on religion, on sex, or sexual orientation. I don't think there's any room in the American society. I believe that in America, in a sense, we are involved in an experiment, and we have to make it work. If we fail to make it work here, this little part of the world, then I'm not so sure whether it will work in other places. And you have to live it. So it's just not passing legislation or getting the president to issue an order, an executive order, but we have to live it. We have to make it real. And you have to be consistent. You have to be persistent. And you don't become bitter. You don't become hostile because there's some setbacks or disappointment. You have to think about the long haul. And as I used to say to the young people in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in all the roles that I've played, and I said to the staff here and to my colleagues, don't give up. Don't give out. Don't give in. Don't get lost in the sea of despair. You set in for the long haul in this long one effort. Yes, sir.
Many people say there's less racial inequality today. Others say there isn't. What do you think, and where do you see the front line of the civil rights movement today?
Well, there's all type of debate and discussion about whether we made progress, or how much progress, whether we are standing still, or whether we're going backward. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress during the past few years. I said on the video, and I continue to say it even today, that I think during the past few years, we have witnessed in America, especially the southern parts of this country, what I like to call a nonviolent revolution. It's a revolution of values, a revolution of ideas. We are a better country. We are a better people. But we are in the process of becoming better. I don't see today what may be described as a civil rights movement. I think there's a need for a movement, but I wouldn't call it a civil rights movement. I would call it maybe a human rights movement, but a movement that would not just be concerned with the needs or the problems of African American, particular ethnic group, but all segments of the population that are hurting, that have been left out and left behind. I think that's what Dr. King was trying to do at the time of his assassination. And maybe that's what we should do. Go back and pick up where he left off and build a powerful coalition. I think in America right now we're just too quiet. In 1963, when people were saying that we should be patient in that March on Washington speech, I said patient is a dirty and nasty word for many of us. We cannot be patient. We don't want our freedom gradually. We want it here and now. If someone have their something on your neck or on your head, someone weighting you down, you don't want them to take it off next week or next year. You want them to take it off now. So I think we have to find a way, especially as we move toward the 21st century, for people to get back out there and push to get not just the government, but the larger society to respond. But I'm very hopeful, I'm very optimistic about the future, really.
It seems that you have had to make some difficult decisions in your life, often taking a stand contrary to popular sentiment, like when you resigned from SNCC, saying, I owed an allegiance to a higher principle. I'm wondering if you can tell us something about the forces that have guided you during these critical moments.
Well, more than anything else, whether it was SNCC in 1966, speaking against the war in Vietnam, taking a stand here in the House, or with some of my colleagues when I was on the City Council, going against some of my friends, the mayor of the city of Atlanta, over a road. You have to live with yourself, and you have to go with your conscience. You have to be able to sleep with yourself. You have to be able to say, did I do the right thing? And a lot of time I think and say, if such and such a person had this role to play that was doing this, how would this person do it, and what would this person do? But I think the underlying force or compass has been, is it going to be good? Speaking against going to war, it was not popular in my district when I spoke against the purging of war. Well, I think, we live in a very violent society, and a lot of times what we read in the newspaper or magazines, what we watch on television, people get a dose of violence over and over again. We were watching the news last night, and the first 4 or 5 minutes on all of the network, it was about child abuse. Something happening. Somehow, in some way, I think we need to teach the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. We need to start teaching it even before children come into the world. Parents need to live it. It's a whole, in terms of attitude, we need to live it, we need to think it. We need to redirect our society toward a society based on nonviolence and not on violence. We have too many guns. In this Congress, we put in more money in the budget for defense, for more bombers, more guns. We don't need them. Hopefully we will never use them. I don't know what we're preparing for. Where we should use the resources to teach people nonviolence. And we should start in Head Start when kids are very, very young, when they're infants really, teaching people the way of nonviolence. Parents should be going to classes and discussion on nonviolence. It's not just not hitting someone or shooting someone or beating, but it's also the whole question of attitude, our words, our thoughts.
Which of your accomplishments are you most proud of?
I'm very proud of my participation and involvement in the civil rights movement. I feel more than lucky. I feel very, very blessed, really, that I had an opportunity at a very, very young age to come under the influence of some unbelievable people, really, that sort of set me on this path. I often think that if it hadn't been for Martin Luther King Jr., who I first heard speaking on the radio when I was 15 years old, for individuals like Rosa Parks that I later met and got to know very well, and others, what would have happened? But to get caught up and be involved in something like the sit-in, and I saw a direct result. I saw the segregation of the city like Nashville, and the Freedom Ride, that desegregated public transportation throughout the South. So I'm very proud of that. Leading that march across the bridge in Selma. Because I think it changed the nation and made the nation better.
I have a question.
Yes.
Drawing on your life's experience, what message do you think that the young people of our generation need to hear most right now?
I think young people, more than anything else, need a message of hope. That you can change things. You can make the society better. You can become involved. Let me give you an example. After we had been involved in the sit-ins in Nashville, and many people have been arrested and jailed, and we had a little law where we were negotiating with the merchants to get them to desegregate the lunch counters and restaurants. What we did, we had one day of a voter registration campaign. Most of us during those years, because back then, in 1960, you had to be 21 in order to register to vote. I guess it was except for the state of Kentucky and I think maybe Georgia, maybe one or two other states. You had to be 21. So we had little signs and we conducted a voter registration effort and it said, "We sat in for you, now stand up for us, register and vote." So I don't think you're never too young to be involved in change. I think the students and young people have to say to our society, start wasting the limited resources we have on building weapons of destruction. Make more of the resources available to educate all of our young people, preparing for the 21st century. And we have to say, save this planet. Save this little planet we call Spaceship Earth. It's not ours to hoard and to waste. And I think young people can have an unbelievable impact in saying to the national government, saying to private industry, that people have a right to know what is in the food we eat, or what is in the water we drink, what is in the air we breathe. That we have to save the planet, save the environment, protect it for unborn generation. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you for the music. Beautiful.
Oh, thanks.